Okay, I started out. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, I started out kind of like in the middle on this issue. I mean, I felt like, from my experience, there's a lot of racism in this world, and, some people can be just racist and have problems, you never know with different people. So when I first heard about it, I was like ready to be outraged. But for me, I feel like people always like to take advantage of the situation. Like for this situation, for example, what stuck out to me was, you know, he offended black women. This guy, um, a radio or TV radio or whatever, announcer or whatever, insulted black women by comparing them to toast. Now, it didn't matter what color of toast he called the woman. What was offensive was the fact that the guy compared their skin tone to toast. Whether that was Serena or Halle Berry, who, by my photo I've shown right here, are obviously very similar in complexion. So it's very weird that people assert that this is a color difference or the guy's colorist. I mean, he specifically said the reason he preferred a Halle Berry was because she was mixed race, not actually because of her skin tone. He just referenced the skin tone, I think, to mean race, period. But if you look at Serena, Serena is not dark skinned. If you look at Halle Berry isn't light skinned, period. I mean, honestly, from my experience, being a similar color to Halle Berry's, I've actually heard that Serena Williams is a MAC NC45 to an NC50, and Halle Berry is about a caramel and Revlon. A caramel and Revlon is basically an NC45. Well, it's actually in between NC44 and NC45, but that's, you know, point is, obviously, that's not very different in complexion. So this was not anything to do with colorism, as so many people claim this guy was colorist. And it's like, if it's colorist, how come they're basically the same complexion? I don't feel more than anything that he really attacked Serena Williams more than Halle Berry. I really don't. Because, I mean, the way I feel about that is like he compared both of their complexions to toast. So, I mean, that's pretty inappropriate and insensitive. It's not about specifically to me like that he said he wasn't attracted to Serena Williams. That is colorist or anti black women to me. I mean, he's not black, so I don't really think he's. I mean, like a lot of people who aren't a specific race might not be attracted to a specific race. For example, I am not racist against Asian people because I'm not attracted to Asian men, you know? So, I mean, if I find all Asian men unattractive, that doesn't make me racist against Asian people. It just means it's never going to happen for me. I see someone with an Asian phenotype, I'm never getting wet. Just like he may never get an erection when he sees a black woman. I also don't know one other thing. People pointed out that this guy was racist because he used the term mulatto. I don't feel like everybody knows that that term is racist. Because honestly, I mean, personally, I have a genetic profile that is actually half black, period, 53% black. I never found that term offensive until someone told me, like, less than a year ago not to use the term. I just generally thought it was kind of old and it made you seem old if you use the term mulatto, so I usually would use the term biracial. He may not know that. He seems like an older guy. He might think that mulatto was an okay term to use. Now that he doesn't have a job, he knows that it was not. But I don't know if he actually knew that that term was actually considered racist. So I'm not really gonna take points against him or say that that means he's racist or anything of that nature. It could just be the terminology he's familiar with. To me, the way I see it, I don't feel like the guy from the clip was specifically actually racist or colorist. I feel like he's insensitive and he committed a racist act by comparing black women to toes. And that's the only thing I feel is wrong in that situation is the fact that the guy compared black women's skin tone to toes, not the fact that he can't get an erection over black women. That's not racist. That's just his own personal thing over there. So, I mean, I don't really think that his preference makes him racist or colorist because there's tons of white people and Hispanic people and Asian people who don't like people outside. Like, they don't, I'm not saying they don't like, they're not attracted to people outside of their race. There's plenty of black people who are not attracted to people outside of their race. Does that make any of those people racist? No. It does not make those people racist to not be attracted to people outside of their race. I say that as a person who is a swirler and interracially dates and is a divested black woman myself. I do not have any issue with other people's preferences, whether it includes me or whether it doesn't include me. I mean, why would I have an issue with someone's personal preference? That's just weird to me, especially when they're another race. That's just odd. To me, I mean, like, to me, it's weird if somebody is like, for example, um, like, say if someone is a specific race, and I see this with any race, like if they're Asian men and they are disrespecting Asian women in favor of Hispanic women, I'm gonna think something's off about that because you are attacking someone for being Asian. So you have a problem there. You are Asian. How are you attacking someone for being Asian? You get what I'm saying? Things like that, there's a problem. And I would see that with a white man if he was attacking white women in favor of black women, for that matter. I mean, I just don't like people who don't like themselves. It's kind of like, well, what's going on there? There's something deeper than what you're actually expressing. But, you know, someone who just isn't attracted to someone of a different ethnicity is not a racist or a colorist. They just happen to like what's similar to them. And to me, I kind of feel like this guy, I find commonality with him to some extent in preference. Like, personally, for me, I do not find very fair skinned white men attractive, okay? I have said before, like, I don't find redheaded men attractive at all. I don't like freckles. I don't like fair skin. Okay. I don't like those things. I prefer men, white men, to look more similar to people who are darker. That's just how it is. I prefer curlier hair. I prefer dark hair. I prefer dark skin. Eye color is a little different. I do prefer green eyes. But generally, I do prefer many features that are considered more ambiguous. And you can see in my dating history that the men that looked ambiguous were the men that I preferred. Now, I actually honestly respect him for knowing his limits because it's like a lot of the time, I understand this. Some people push their limit way too much, you know, and they don't stay with where they're actually comfortable. Like personally, for me, I push my limit. I do. I push my limit way too much. I will go with guys who are like blonde, blue eyed. I push my limit so much, sometimes I even go with guys that have some freckles, which, like I said, I really hate freckles. I really despise freckles, but I've sometimes tried to push it just a slight with freckles. And it's not a good idea. You can end up having a problem. And, it's not right to the person, it's not right to you, it's not right to anyone to try and push your limit to something that you can't be attracted to, you know. And I mean, like, he shouldn't try and push himself to be attracted to black women if he's not attracted to black women. It can make a lot of different problems because it just can make a lot of different problems if you're not really into certain types of skin types, for example, you know. And that's just to say like about your sexuality, not to say like you don't like those type of people, you judge them improperly or something, but I'm saying to actually, be intimate with someone like that and you don't find that as, appealing, I mean, you should know your limits. And that's a good thing there to me is knowing your limit. Now, I would not say, like I said, his way of saying, black women were like toast and things of that nature. I do not agree with that, obviously, but I'm just saying the preference side of it, where people were uncomfortable, like saying that he likes the mix as opposed to black women, that is not wrong at all to me because you should know what you like. Why would you push something that you don't like? You could end up, very uncomfortable in a very uncomfortable situation where you're not attracted to the person, but you're pushing yourself to be attracted to someone because you're trying to make yourself think that, skin tone doesn't matter. When skin tone does matter when it comes to these kinds of things, it just does. Like I said, he went wrong in his crude, description of black women. But I don't think that description was just in reference to Serena. It was because one, Serena Williams isn't really any different in complexion to Halle Berry. So to me, it's like it's a racial difference. And honestly, to me, it's like if he went wrong in his, description of black women, how does that really mean um, that to me, it's just how he went about it was wrong. He didn't really have a filter, you know. But, I don't really see that what he was trying to convey was actually wrong. To be honest, personally, I mean, like, I think proximity and preference, preferring something that's more that has more proximity to you, racially, it's not abnormal. Personally, for me, I mean, like, I used to be much more honest about that. Like, I guess lately, because of my dating habits and things of that nature, I've kind of like been quiet about the my preference with white men. I don't really I don't really talk about it. Sometimes I talk about it and it's true, but I think maybe people don't realize it's true because of the context it's in. But generally for me, like, I used to be really honest about those kinds of things, and I used to say way like more. Um, I used to be a little bit way more blunt, honestly, on those issues. But I mean, in the uh, kind of context that it was in, it was more for shock factor. But anyway, I kind of just I'm just saying basically, I kind of agree with the whole point of, just knowing what your preference is and going with that and knowing what your limits are, you know, whatever that may be. And that could be in so many other ways. But I mean, as far as racially, there are limits for certain people. Not everyone is attracted to everybody, you know, that's how I feel with race. Some people are like attracted to everybody, so they assume everyone is attracted to everybody. It's just the same way with like sexuality. Like, some pansexual and bisexual people assume everybody's bisexual and pansexual just because they're attracted to everybody. Just like someone who's attracted to every race assumes everyone else is attracted to every race. But that's just not how sexuality works. I mean, some people are attracted to different things, and you can't say that people can really control that because we really can't. Also, one other thing I wanted to come across was the fact that people kept saying that he preferred mixed women. If you listen to what he was saying, he didn't say that he preferred mixed women. He said he was comfortable with mixed women, that he was more comfortable and he basically understood was where the cutoff was for him, you know. And to me, that is not preference. It's just tolerating them. A lot of people think just because someone tolerates you, it's a preference or you have a privilege because someone is tolerating you. You're thinking just because he didn't show any interest in black women and he might tolerate a mixed woman, what do you think? How do you think that's going to turn out? Someone who doesn't prefer mixed women but is with mixed women, and they aren't preferred, they're just tolerated. That is not going to turn out too well. You can't be in a, I mean, at least personally, I do not like, and I've had experience with men like that. I do not like men who just will tolerate mixed people and just be like, basically, because it includes their preference, their interest, so to speak, or their attraction, they will still be with them. Because to me, it's like, well, you still don't prefer everything that is me. I mean, if you prefer white features, that's fine. I've never had any issue with the fact that some white men and white women, most white men and white women, actually do, prefer white features. I just don't appreciate, just valuing basically my white side. I personally don't think any mixed person would, because why Why would they want only half of them appreciated? And I've talked about this in other videos with black men. It works the same way with white men, only this time it might not be from a place of self hate, but it's still not healthy for the person who is mixed because they have a whole other side that's actually black. And so it's like if you have a preference to white features and you just include mixed women and you're comfortable with mixed women because they're mixed with white too, that's not really a good position to be in if you want to be with a mixed woman because a mixed woman is not just white, she's mixed. If someone can only like half of you, they can't like you. I've said this so many times. I mean, even if they don't hate black people, but they don't like the black side, obviously, they don't find that side attractive. They only find the white side attractive. And nothing against them that that's the only side they find attractive. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with white people appreciating white features. I mean, they are white people. But it's not really healthy to just be tolerated. So people claiming that this is a privilege for mixed people or that black women were attacked but mixed people were not, that is not the case. I mean, I feel like honestly both mixed people and black people um, were insulted by the situation, because of how he described both types of people and how he showed that he had no preference for either type but tolerated one and found no attraction in the other. And you can come across some people who are worse than this, honestly. You could come across some people who have issues with black women and be mixed and then encounter situations like this. Goodness, those are the worst and the most uncomfortable and the most head scratching, honestly. At the end of the day, I feel like, you know, dark skinned black women, if we're um, I mean, like I said, Serena Williams isn't a dark skinned black woman, but since we're talking about dark skinned black women, I think they are actually kind of lucky in the sense that, excuse me, they aren't, preferred by people who are, not really going to prefer them, but just only like half of them or will have issues with another half of them. It's best to, deflect or not attract people who aren't going to be good for you, but only attract the people who are actually going to be good for you and actually prefer you for you. A lot of the time when black women get attention from anyone, if that's a black man, if that's a white man, a Hispanic man, or an Asian man, usually, especially in the latter cases, they are being preferred for their phenotype as a black woman, seen as the true black woman, even though that's not true, but a lot of people go for that type of phenotype. And therefore, there are no problems with their features, no problem with their hair. They're allowed to be as black as possible. Their features are allowed. Their skin tone is allowed. Everything is just out there in the open and totally fine and appreciate it, And to me, it's like, why would you be upset because some person does not find you attractive who has one nothing to do with you? And, you know, like, of course, not everyone is going to see you as their cup of tea. I don't expect as a black woman or a mixed woman that I will be everybody's cup of tea. So why would I be concerned about some random person's preference? Why would someone's preference be colorist or, racist just because of the type of person they like? That's not how racism or colorism works. More of how colorism and racism work is like basically if he were attracted to mixed women, but he does not like people of African descent, so therefore doesn't like any of them. That would be racism because basically they are able to be attracted to mixed women or black women, but they have their own racist views against mixed women or black women. If that's not this, so I mean, sure, there are people who prefer mixed people, and that's not colorist that they do. And thinking that mixed people can't be preferred, what's wrong with you? What if someone who was mixed thought black people couldn't be preferred? That wouldn't be right. So, what are you saying that mixed people can't be anybody's preference? Like, you really think that you're always supposed to be the preference for every freaking person? Every person who ever has any attraction to black women has to have an attraction to dark skinned black women or black women and not mixed women? That's just weird to me. I mean, I think people are free to have whatever interest they have in whatever race they have an interest in. Obviously, to me, I mean, um, I would say someone who can find attraction with mixed women is obviously not a racist because if they were, they wouldn't like racist people don't include mixed people. They just see them as black and they are racist against them. So to me, it's like that's obviously not what that was. And to honestly go off of that, I think it wouldn't even be wrong for a white person, white man, to not be attracted to any black woman, mixed woman, Asian woman, Hispanic woman, any woman of color. I mean, and the same thing for white women. It wouldn't be anything wrong for them to find no man of color attractive and only find white men and white women attractive. I mean, how is that wrong? But if a black person only finds black people attractive, that's okay. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, people generally in society prefer what they are. It's just what it is. And even like I said, as a swirler myself and a divested black woman, I can tell you, I may swirl and I may be in relationships with people of other races, but I still do have a preference for people who are more similar than to me than different from me. That's why I don't prefer Asian men. That's why I don't really like fair skinned men. That's why I don't like dark skinned black men. And, there's nothing wrong with that. It really isn't. Because, I mean, like, a lot of people are attracted to people who are similar to them. That's not racism. And that's not racism for anyone, white or black, Hispanic or Asian. I found it really, really odd people tried to turn this into a colorism issue because it was like I said, if you can see in my um, picture here, you can see that Serena Williams is basically the same complexion as Halle Berry. So I don't understand why people tried to turn this into a colorism issue. Halle Berry is a caramel complexion. She wears caramel and Revlon. And I remember hearing Serena Williams wears the NC45 or NC50. And you can look at them and tell they're both caramel. But Serena Williams just tans sometimes, so she looks darker because she's an athlete and things of that nature. That doesn't mean that, she's not brown skinned, and Halle Berry is brown skinned too. So, I mean, turning this into a colorism issue seemed desperate to me because it was almost like, people, colorism, um, manipulators and things of that nature try to take every issue and try and make it into dark versus light when these people are literally basically the same color. Yet you just try to pretend here that, these people were different and that, he was being colorist against Serena Williams. When in reality, Serena Williams is a black woman and Halle Berry is a mixed woman. So obviously, it's not a shock that a white person would prefer someone who is half white over someone who is black, any more than it's shocking for someone who's black to prefer a mixed person over someone who is fully white. Many black people do that, by the way. I mean, like, many black people do prefer people who are half black, but they won't be with someone who's white. There's nothing racist in that. And there's nothing racist in the other preference. I don't think that has to do with color. I understand, yes, he did use a description of being more colored when it came to describing them and comparing them to toast. Like I said, that's an insult to both of them. But, I don't really think that was specifically just about color because he specifically started talking about Halle Berry's mixed ancestry, which that's what I think was more of what he was addressing than Serena Williams' complexion. So to me, it's like it's about race. It's not about color. And considering Halle Berry has white ancestry and the man has white ancestry, it's not a shock that a white man is attracted to someone who is white because Halle Berry is white and she is black. That's what mixed people are, biracial people are. They have black in them and they have white in them. Some black people prefer, oh, some also one other thing, yeah, I wanted to address. A lot of people try and act like, it's offensive for black white people to never be attracted to black people. But it's kind of like, how come people never say it's racist for black people to never be attracted to white people? Like, it shouldn't be racist either way. Some people are just attracted to their own phenotype. Nothing wrong with that. None of that is racist. But I mean, if it's racist, then all of it's racist. Black people are racist, I guess, to a high percentage because black people tend to be with each other. And, you know, Asian people are racist because Asian people tend to be with each other. Hispanic people are racist because they tend to be with each other, and so forth with white people. I mean, that's not how it works. Not being interracially attracted to people doesn't make you racist at all. But I'm just saying, like, if we're going to start blaming people, I think we got to blame everyone of every color. And as far as proximity, that's a major reason for me why I prefer Hispanic men over white men. But it's just like, for me, like culturally, I still feel more similarity to white Americans because I mean, like black Americans tend to have, you know, many of us have the same culture as white Americans. So it's just easier to relate with, honestly. Oh no, I just don't see this as racism. I see this as, the comment as insensitive. I see the comment as, racist and insensitive, like it's a racist act, but I don't feel like he is racist because if he was racist, he would not have said he was comfortable with Halle Berry. So to me, I don't see that as a racist person or a colorist person. That's not what I see. I just see it as more like it's insensitive and like, there's really like that's not really a person who has a good filter, obviously. Because like, for example, for me, I sometimes say, I sometimes think certain things about people of different complexions, but I wouldn't just say it, you know. I wouldn't literally just say those things to those people. I would keep it to myself. Maybe like if I was fighting them or had an argument, I would tell them maybe the truth about them and how I feel about my skin tone and why I don't prefer them when it comes to skin tone and things of that nature. But I only do it to explain myself usually. But like I would not just like basically just tell someone like I see their skin tone as such and such, something offensive. You know what I mean? Like you might see someone's complexion as something offensive, but you don't have to tell them that. And that's where I feel he went wrong, is that he specifically said what he thought of black women's skin tones. That was the problem. So that's the question I have, honestly, is am I like to me, I'm like, so is this if this guy is colorist against black women for his preference for mixed women, then how come, you know, people like me aren't considered colorists because we prefer darker, like Italian or Greek men over like English or Irish men? How come it's not colorist for me to prefer a white man that looks more ambiguous than, a very light skinned man? But, uh, someone who's white, you're saying if they prefer someone who is like Zendaya Coleman over a Lupita, that's colorist. Like to me, that's what I ask so many times on so many channels, and nobody really answers this. They avoid it like the plague because they know that it's not really colorist. I think they know deep down that it's just they think that they can pressure people into not saying things and to basically pressure people into preferring specific things they want them to prefer. But that's just not how it works to me. I mean, like, people are allowed to prefer what they prefer, and that shouldn't be shamed or looked down upon. there are, other black people who prefer, excuse me, but I feel like clearly Lupita and even, Serena, who is black, is further from him than Halle Berry, who is white. She's half white. It's not wrong for a white person to prefer white features and prefer half white person over, black people. The problem I feel, like I said, for mixed person involved, like in my experience, is lack of appreciation of the black side. Like if someone is just tolerating mixed people, it's a problem. But if like they actually prefer mixed people, that's fine. Like I wouldn't have any issue with that. But it's just like people like that who people are saying prefer, that's not preference, that's just toleration. And it's hard to sift through like people who do that, who have more of a like tolerance of them rather than like an actual preference towards that. And I think that's because, some people, when you're mixed, there's more proximity. So then there's less of the whole aspect of, black and white attraction being opposites attract. If, you're mixed, you're not really the opposite. So, there's there's a lack of opposites attract to some extent. Now, it's not always that way. Sometimes you can still get, you know, that factor in, but it just depends on the person, really. And that's another thing. I was watching one channel and they were acting like preference meant that basically you prefer one type of phenotype, but the other phenotypes are still appealing to you. They're just not as appealing, basically. So basically, you would say that those people aren't ugly. And, those people are still, ideal and attractive, and you still might find them to be your type. No, that person has a lean towards other people, but they still include in their preference everyone in that case. For me personally, I do not include every race as my preference. I have a lean. For me, I lean more towards brown skinned men. I lean towards Indian, Arab, Hispanic, and mixed race men. And then I have a preference with white men as well. So white men are included in my whole preference or attraction, so to speak. I guess in this person's vocabulary, my preference would actually be brown men. My attraction would include white men. I would say I think some of my preference could include Southern European men, kind of. I think, um, but that doesn't mean that my attraction is going to include all the other men, Asian, black, red-headed men. Those things aren't going to be included in my attraction. Like when I say preference, my preference means my sexual orientation, my sexual preference, which means basically anyone that I can be attracted to. Not that I prefer one man over another man, but I'm attracted to both types of men. No, there is no attraction to Asian men. There is no attraction to black men, and there is no attraction to redheaded men. That's just the way it is. And honestly, being completely honest, my attraction to really fair skinned, blonde, blue eyed guys is minimum. But I would say there is some attraction. It's just not the preference. But anyway, Um, to me, I just think that some people kind of like impose their own sexual attraction and preference on other people, and they just shouldn't do that. And honestly, I will go in and say one more thing about that is I don't think there's anything wrong with people who tolerate, someone who is mixed, even. Nothing's wrong with them specifically, in my opinion. They are just people who, happen to not find those types of, phenotypes they're ideal. Just like for me, like I said, with like, I think blonde, blue eyed guys would be more so that or like brown haired, blue eyed guys who aren't dark skinned, but they're not very light either. Those would be the types that I would say I tolerate. Is that really wrong of me that I just tolerate them? No, any more than it's wrong that he tolerates, mixed women. I mean, it's basically getting to a point where like you're comfortable or attracted to something that's different from you, but not far enough for you to basically be unattracted to them. So I don't see any of that as wrong. You just have to think this is about attraction to other races. And to me, when it's attraction to other races, there's nothing wrong with being picky or discriminatory on their phenotypes because it's a different phenotype from yours. So, of course, you're going to have a bias. I mean, not everyone does have a bias. Some people are those types that find opposites attract. So, that's not always the case, but in many cases, people like to see some kind of similarity somewhere. I don't think that also that black people who find, white skin unattractive, I don't think that they are colorists either. And so, like, people saying, like, that a white person who finds black skin unattractive as colorists, no, I don't find either types of people as colorists. Like I said, it's not really expected that people of other races are obligated to be attracted to other races. I mean, like, some people are and some people aren't. I don't think anyone should be condemned for these kind of things. And with that said, I don't really feel like any of this has to do with color preferences because obviously, like I said, Serena Williams is basically the same color as Halle Berry. So obviously, his preference is tied to being part white. And to me, like I said, he doesn't seem racist or anything like that. With all that said, I do think that Serena Williams is much prettier than Halle Berry. She has a prettier face and more feminine body type. So I feel like people have this idea of what they find as more ideal. And to me, it's like if someone has an ideal of preferring whiter features, of course, Serena Williams is not white, so she's not going to fit that ideal of white features. But that doesn't